Um, let's see. And I will say the 6 words you're not allowed to say per sensors, so that
I
way
am
nobody can
recording.
distribute this. Yeah, I know. Well, that way you can't distribute it. Uh, it doesn't mean we can't have the meeting. It just means you can't distribute it. You know?
It means it's going to get edited.
Yeah. Hey, and at the way things are going right now, if I got like a sanction for like 2 years, it'd only be serving half a sentence.
Shh. Stop it,
Don't
you'll
you go
jinx
on the
us.
Kingdom Facebook page? Skipping it a light, all right? You know.
So terrible. It is 2:00. You are free to begin your class.
All right. Well, cool. Um, let's see. So basically, this class was about. So where's my notes here? This is the managing range, uh, tension, and so forth. It's more of like the overall overview of range, position, pressure, and I actually added some more to it, did some editing in my notes. So, there's a couple of factors in a fight, right? You have this pass, and we're talking individual one-on-one combat, right? And you engage in a couple of different things that happen, and a lot of times it's we become used to doing something and then learning a reaction from it, right? And then we process that, we record it in our heads, and that's like like I talked about earlier, where you fight your friends, you get used to fighting your friends, so you do better and better and better with your friends because your computer database, your battle computer is recording this information and saving it, and it helps you make better decisions each time you negotiate a pass with them, right? But when you get in a broader spectrum of fighting, and you're fighting a lot more people that are different skill levels, and and get into higher skill levels and in different locations, because their experience and how they do things might be different, right? So based off of that information, you need to have a tool to help you train to fight anybody anywhere, and building blocks for that. Because if you don't teach yourself how to fight Gary, because Gary is not all over the world. There's Gary, Bob Jones, Georges, and crazy guys at other places that are really good, and you have to be able to adapt to perform better and change in your fighting, and that's only based off of the tools that you collect in your toolbox. So what I'm going to kind of go over a little more is, I call it fighting, a fighting formula, and it's like, all right, it's math, great. But it's really more of to organize some thought process and to help work with your training while you do your activities to better yourself, right? And the math, the way I put it, it's like, let me do this share screen here. Where is it? D. Boom, boom. All right, so I get this beautiful little screen here. Hopefully you can read. It's only text. Whoa, Jesus Christ. Thank you. All right. Okay. So, at first I didn't have tempo in this, you know, thought process. So really, I think in a, and I think I phrased it pretty well, not trying to pat myself on the back, but when I came up with it, I was like, yeah, I think this does put it in plain language well enough. There are 4 factors for improving your probabilities of successful pass, right? Because there's no way to dictate the outcome of your fight other than trying to perform your best is the only thing that you're trying to achieve. And if your best is better than the other guy, then you achieved success, hopefully, right? Because you can have a great pass, do everything right, and lose a fight because they hit you and you missed a block. But doesn't mean you fought terrible. It just means he got an opportunity that you missed the block on. You know, and if there's any way to die in a fight, that's probably the best way. To where you're like, hey, you know what, that was a good fight. You walk away uh, satiated from all your work and effort, not just standing there and getting plinked away and hit. So, but so we get the range, position, pressure, and timing, and tempo. See, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 things. My God, that's like, I don't need squires. I need a secretary. Uh, just joking. I need an assistant. Anybody looking? It's like a protege. There we go. But you know, with these things together, and when you build those tools and work, and all of them have a relationship that is strong together, you're going to increase your success. You know, I don't think probabilities is a factor involved there, because that's just how you think, and every situation is going to be different. But the better you get at processing probabilities while you're fighting will increase your opportunity to be successful. Especially, you know, fighters have been fighting for a couple of years, and you know their feet are wet. They've been involved. They're learning stuff, and it looks like my camera froze. Am I okay there, Ari? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you look fine. You look
Oh,
good.
okay. All right. Cool. Yeah.
Well,
So,
you froze. Your face froze, but I can see your screen.
okay. All right. Good. All right. So, um, but anyway, let's get back to the probabilities. You know, I look at the probabilities, and I always sit there, and you know, and it's more of a bucket for me. You know, so like when we talk about, you know, to the off center of your opponent. You know, let's go. Let's see. Let's change this one here. Go boop, and we're gonna share this diagram here. Oh, God, I'm so used to right clicking instead of left clicking, and that's what this screen wants. Sorry, guys. You know, you would think that I haven't worked in IT, right? So, but you know, when we talk about probabilities, we're looking at target zones, and you know, that's very. Oh, I moved that. There we are. And we want to go here. You know, so I divided this opponent up in half and in little 6 quadrants of target zone, you know, and I have to think about probabilities and my relationship to the targets. You know, if I step over to this side of my opponent, I'm further away from this side of the target, right? So if I decide to throw an offside or an offside leg, being a lefty, you know, if I was a right-hander, you know, it's like you're throwing a shot, whatever shot, you're further away from the target. So your percentage of chance is going to change with that. You know, it's just variant to whatever, you know, your opponent really leaves blatantly open or not. So with that in mind, you know, it's a lower probability shot versus a higher probability over on this side of the body. So, you know, and that reaches to that point of, hey, if I'm going to fire at shots over on the right side of my opponent, I should probably break the center line and be on the right side of my opponent. And if I want to throw shots at his left side of his body, I should be on the left side of his body. You know, and that's really boils down to. But you know, you look at those probabilities because you want to go to the highest probability shot. You're throwing it in a zone. You know, when we get to C range, like we discussed in the range class, you know, that makes a factor on what targets are available to you. You know, so that's why, you know, we look at range as a factor, your position in relationship to your target, and then, you know, timing and tempo are 2 things that are involved here too, right? You know, timing, you know, is knowing when to throw and when not to throw. You know, and that's how it factors and you get from your probabilities. Let's see. Let's switch back and forth. I believe it or not, I actually didn't practice this. This is why this looks so seamless. All right, can't see all your laughing faces, but good. I believe you're laughing at me. Good, it's good. Thank you. But anyhow, but the thing is, you know, timing. You know, everybody that's been fighting for a while, they hear about timing. They all know what timing means. You know, it's the, you know, when you throw your shot versus, you know, and missing that opportunity, and that's usually what teaches you that your timing is off. Is when you're like, shoot, I could have hit that target, and I was thinking of throwing the shot, and I missed my opportunity, my timing. And how to improve timing is the thing that you should be practicing, you know, and that's with your eyes, right? But that timing is a huge factor. But you also got to add in tempo, the rhythm, this, you know, the speeding up and the slowing down of your fight, and then how's that pressure part of the equation come into play? you know, because like pressure slash tension, you know, depends on, you know, everybody has, there's a couple little different definitions of it. And to me, pressure is basically where when I'm applying pressure, I'm giving my opponent an action that looks like it's aggressive, you know, trying to get his attention to deal with that. So like, you know, closing into an opponent, walking just right at him is pressure. It's just, you know, you're giving pressure straight onto your target, right? You know, and how they react to it. You know, your opponent is, you know, coming at you and you relieve the pressure by rotating out and doing a lateral step out of the way. You're releasing pressure off of your opponent from you while he's trying to apply it to you. So, you know, there's a positive and negative to that. And I think it's an important factor to remember, uh, you know, um, you know, and like another example of pressure is like, oh, I actually have that in my notes here. Example of a threat is, you know, a threat is a fake. You know, I mean, that's probably one of the more common things because, you know, like, you know, that second year fighter comes out and you're trying to teach them a little bit and you're trying to get them to have some kind of level of success. And they're like, well, you know, I lead with the flat snap because that leads to the offside all the time, or vice versa, you know, because they get in this condition of a 1-2 thing that helps them get engaged into the fight a lot. And so you're like, well, hey, why don't you just throw a fake, you know, do a little balk with your, you know, throw a half of flat snap and pull it back and then change the shot to whatever opens up, you know, so that's pressure. Now, how you apply pressure at different places is the key thing when you're involved. You know, it's like the flat snaps that we talked about in range. When you practice throwing flat snaps at a Pell that doesn't move, you have to practice throwing a shot from C, B, and A range because your sword's hitting the Pell differently. The body mechanics are different for each of those shots based off those ranges. So if you really want to practice a flat snap, you're going to do more than just standing at B range, throwing it at the side of the Pell, thinking you're hitting the side of somebody's head. You know, um, so you know, pressure is the same way. You know, the outside movement out on that outside C range, you know, you're barely into threat engagement with your opponent, or you are just at the edge of it to where you can hit the front of the target. The pressure you have is different for the fact that, hey, you're less of a threat farther away from them. They can see everything that you do. So, you know, how you manipulate that, those pieces to it makes the difference. You know, it's to where, you know, an exaggerated motion outside the range may not be as much of a threat. Possibly, it depends on the fighter you're with, but there's some factors involved there, you know, because they can see your whole body. So your position change, your feet change can be intentional to be a pressure tension maneuver on them. You know, the movement of your hand from your guard to where you're like a high guard to an A frame or whatever, however you do those changes, those threats are very visual and they work really well at C range, to where if you think if you're really close and you sit there like, yeah, I'm this guard and this guard, that guy just doesn't know if you're throwing a leg shot, you know, an offside or a wrap or whatever. You know, the urgency is different because of what he can see, you know. And so when you're dealing with tension and pressure, you have to sit there and think, what a range are you applying it? And that's the range that you need to work at with those techniques, you know. So it's putting it in those buckets, so that, you know, so you can work on that factor by building pressure for the right appropriate time and place. You know, I think that makes sense. Hopefully, you know, it's like, uh, you know, I've been left-handed all my life, and it's very confusing for people when I explain things to them because they just don't get me. You know, it's like, poor me. Um, so you got to throw a joke in there to keep you people happy. All right. It's like even me, I'm looking at me and my screen's frozen and I'm like, no reaction. All right. So, you know, so when we're talking, you know, that's really about the pressure part. You know, so when you start training, you start out that Pell, or when we get back to fighting and you're fighting somebody, you know, start putting some effort into tension and pressure a little bit, you know. And I really do highly recommend listening to Duke Branos's class that's after this one in another room. You know, and I'm going to try to make sure we cut just a little early on this so you can take a look at it, because he'll explain it a lot better, and it's a great tool. This is the tool that makes a difference from the guy that just got knighted to the guy that's won more than one crown. You know, being able to use pressure, position, and range, is a huge factor to those people applying all these things. Yeah, there's people that have got lucky. There's people that, have some, great physical ability. But bottom line is, in the long run, the majority of people did work and effort and time and sacrifice and worked on these things to make themselves better. That's really the truth of it. They're not the average is not the outlier. Um, so on position, that relationship of yourself and to your target zone, you know, position means like what we discussed earlier. It's that left and right of your opponent. Where are you at in relationship to your target? What are your probabilities of hitting him with a wrap from there to one side of his body to the other? I can't really go into much in position other than gaining position is the toughest part. And I think that's the part probably most of everybody in this room will relate to is, yeah, how do you get to there? It's not like I can just walk over to the corner of somebody without them moving. They got feet and they don't want to get hit either. I mean, most people don't wear enough armor to get hit to take it, I guess. I don't know. But anyhow, uh, um, but that position, gaining that position, like we discussed earlier, and this is why this builds up off of range. It's managing range. Your position changes at B and C. Those are the bigger places where you have to make those decisions. And that's where practice and building the battle computer are the most important part, is understanding those things. Excuse me. All right, that wasted 10 seconds. I got a clock running. Just joking. but really though, understanding that position part, and it's hard to get position, and it's going to be different for everybody for different abilities. Like, we got Osric in here, and Osric's a really tall guy. So him taking a normal step versus me taking a normal step, he's like a step. I'm a step and a half to his one step, and he steps to my shoulder. It's a huge difference. So it's going to vary by the individual and how successfully it's going to work. Those of us that are small, short people, we have to do a little extra work. And don't tell the tall people that because they'll take advantage of us. But we're harder working fighters. You can tell them that part. But really though, us gaining that position, and that's why I like a lot more often we're deeper in a B range when we're trying to get a position change. And somebody asked earlier in the class, like, how do you negate the longer range guys? And it's like, yeah, you have to come in, with your defense. You have to close. There's no choice about it. You got to be close enough to hit the guy. And the one thing that amazes me when I talk about that is, it seems like such a giant mountain to close on somebody big like Osric or His Majesty Morgan. They're huge guys. They can manipulate, and they can grab me with their shield and probably toss me out of the air. You know, you know, but the thing is, I go in a melee and I got a 9-foot spear, no shield, and I got 10 guys in front of me, and I'm just fighting like I don't give a shit. Because I'm not worried. I don't think about it. And I have the possibility of 3 different people throwing at me at any time. And anytime I throw a shot, I'm at a high liability, right? You know, but I don't sit there and think of that as a mountain. But I get in front of a big guy, and now he's a mountain. This is one person that I have to focus on, not 10 across from me in a melee. And that's the perspective you have to get back into your head going, hey, this is one person I have to negotiate. We're both focused on each other, and I have to trust my defense. It's just like any fighting in melees where you're like, everybody's like, go forward, go forward, go forward. And they're telling you to take one step. You put up your block and you go forward. And with somebody you're fighting one-on-one, you do the same thing. My foster knight was 5 foot tall, Viscount Sir Eldred. And, I learned a lot of watching somebody close in on people and not have fear, and actually the bigger the people were, the more happy it was to fight them because he could hide behind, in front of their shield in front of them because he could just duck and disappear. And then they have to look for him and he knows where they're at because they're so damn big. But that closing and changing on that range and getting that position you need, the shorter you are, the closer you're going to have to be, and you need to build those tools for that and figure out what works best for you. And that's where that pressure and tension become a factor to you because it helps build opportunities and windows, the windows of opportunity, right? And that's what feeds the timing of things. Oh, we got a little chat. Let's see. There we go. Oh, you want me to restart that video? Let's see. Stop. Start. There we go. I don't know. I'm not really that animated over here. I was really hiding behind a still shot I actually put up for a screenshot. Tricked all of you guys. Uh, okay. But anyhow, so then you get into that, that pressure and tension to get those things, and that's a part that feeds that, and it also has that relationship to tempo, right? And so tempo, I picked up more from Rapier, because we always used to talk, guys are like, all right, you have to lead the dance. That's what we tell guys. You're out there fighting. It's like, well, what do I got to do? You got to lead the dance. It's like, how do I lead the dance? I don't know. It's not like high school where you're like, well, you're expected because you're the guy and the girl, because of social norms at that time. It's like you have to take control of the fight. And how do you take control of the fight? Well, when you're fighting a good guy, how do you take control of the fight? That's not an easy question to answer. It's easy for the guy, the armchair quarterback over the side of the field drinking water, watching you sweat and trying to go fight, Duke Branos or Al-Anon, going, hey, go control the fight against that guy. You know what I mean? It's like you have to build up those pieces, because these are the tools that you do to change that. You start figuring out, what is the tempo and rhythm of the fight? How does that person want to fight? You start watching people and how they fight. Like me, my tempo is a pretty good little, fast beat, right? But what I end up learning to do is we're going to go move a lot, put a lot of pressure on a guy and go, and just stop. And awkward pauses are like conversations. We're sitting there talking, and you ever have that moment, it just goes quiet. Nobody's saying anything. And someone is like, I got to break the silence. What do I say? Awkward silence. And then it happens, right? So in fighting, it happens the same way. You have to sit there and figure out what interrupts the tempo. If they have control, but if you got to control the beat, and to this fight, and they have that control, because a lot of times what guys will do, and you watch the better fighters, they slow down. It's patience, right? And it's like they're controlling the tempo by slowing it down, by not reacting to you going really fast. So you start lulling yourself into that psychologically, like, okay, we need to get in this groove. We're communicating to each other through physical and visual communication right now. And so you have to figure out, how do I change that tempo? And it's going to be different for everybody. Like I said, we're all different shapes and sizes, and we all have different attributes we bring to it, right? And it's like, if I was a bigger guy, I would probably use more threat pressure to change the tempo, to speed guys up, but that's like, I guess, an example for a tempo change right there. Another one is, you kind of you push in and out on them. You push over on a corner a lot more, and you start getting the tension up, and like if you think about it, if you're engaging with somebody at outside range, and you're really tense, they're going to read that, right? Because everybody can see that. So you're putting a theme out there in that body language to add tension. Now, when you fight that guy that's sitting over there and he's like, hey, how's it going? You ready? That's the oldest night trick ever, was like, you ready? Bang! It's like, you're like, all right, that'll never happen again. But it's that change, that tempo. I mean, it's a good example of that tempo change. So you need to figure out the tools that work best for you on that tempo. I try to, I get to throw an eye in there. That's good. But the way I navigate it a lot of times is, if I got a taller opponent and I don't want to chase him, because I know chasing, I'm fighting on my knees, and and after a while it gets tiring running around on your knees too. The only good thing is you don't have a leg to hit, right? But the thing is, I have to sit there and put pressure on him and change the tempo, and I have to take the fight away from him. and the tempo, it's like, all right, I'm going to draw back, I'm going to go relax, and then I'm going to go hard as soon as he feels comfortable. Because you can watch his body language, right? We're having this conversation. He's all, oh, you backed off. I'm going to go up there. And then you're like, and you just go high, hot, and tight. And they see that, and then you just take him back down, relax a little bit, go back up again, back down. You start doing stuff like that. You start figuring out how tempo works, how fast you move on that outer circle. So let's say you're trying to rotate your opponent. You're standing on the C-range circle, and you start going around over to the left. You go over to the right. How fast you go is adding to that tempo change and whatever you're going to do. So if I want to sit there and I got a guy that's a super fast fighter, right? I'll go push over and I'll stay on the outside circle, right? And I'm walking on that line and I'm going to go hard to the right as fast as I can. Well, not as fast, but walking fast. And then when I come back over to the left, since I'm left-handed, I'll slow down a little bit. Because he's trying to figure out, what am I doing? And he's trying to start addressing, because I become this up and down variable to where he wants, both of us want this flat line. But the thing is, we want it to be our flat line. That's the tempo. So that's some food for thought there. And then let's talk about timing a little bit. Timing is one of the hardest things to train because you're reacting, and the big thing with hard suit fighting and even rapier too, knowing when to throw, and knowing when to hold them. Kenny Rogers, bless his soul. But you have to develop that timing, and the only way you can develop timing is keeping track of how you're training and doing the shot. So what I would do to work on a shot is I had an idea. I was like, hey, I think I'm going to try this, and I'm going to do this duck thing, and because I see this flat snap on a guy's leg because I'm left-handed, so it's wide open, and ducking is so bizarre at this moment. Well, I'm going to go to practice, and I'm going to go find the first year, 2-year fighters, the lower level fighters, right? And I'm going to go do something, and I'm not looking about, did I hit him in the leg or not? Because that's where we start. Our mind goes is like, what's the successful hard point that I can put a checkbox saying, I hit 5 guys in the leg tonight. That means this works. You're looking for this validity in our minds, right? But what I am doing is I'm sitting there trying to tell myself, all right, as soon as I duck and I start to prime to throw the shot, what does that guy do? Does he flinch? Does he step out? Does he step to the right? Does he throw a shot? And I'll sit there and I'll record this data after a couple. Then I go, hey, I should go to the mid-level guys and try this out, because mid-level guys are faster than the new guy. They have a little more skill set on where they're managing their range. They don't fall for stupid stuff, So I'm just basically making it tighter in the control group that I'm working with. So I'll go out there and I'll do that with them, and I'll record the results of my battle, my mind, and figure out, okay, what are they? And then it's like, all right, well, first level guys prove that it's a possible. Mid-level guys prove that there's some meat to this object of, yeah, what you're thinking is possible to do and can work, and this is the reactions you're getting. And then you go fight the faster guys, the good guys, and because they're the guys that don't fall for fakes, and they don't fall for tricks as often, right? So so you have to really manipulate tempo, pressure, range, and everything else to get something to work with them, and so it's like, all right, I'm going to go there and I'm going to do it with these guys, and I'm going to record those results. What did they do? What happened when this happened, and so forth. Then I look for the commonality, because the commonality between all those people is the thing that tells me more than likely this is the highest probable response I'm going to get from an individual. And when you cross sample that way, it's just, it's statistics, right? It's like you have the idea of, oh, okay, this is more than likely what happens. Well, where are we at when I'm at this range and when I'm in this position? Is the leg really even open? Is that target zone even? Is he blocking that target zone? What target is open? Well, maybe I need to adjust my shot and my idea and my plan to something different and go to a different target. And how do I get to that target? From this position. Well, if I rise up, he's going to rise up. Well, let's go back to the lab, find out. And you're basically, you're collecting this data like a scientist, but you're being a social engineer. And I think, the better you get at those two skill sets, the faster you get at making decisions based off your training. You build up your database. I hope that part makes sense. It's, when it's your own theory, other people will be like, yeah, you're crazy. David Koresh, go burn yourself in a church or something. But when you add all these pieces together and you break up your training, and you're like, when you get done, like you go to practice, you have your plan. It's like we're not athletes in the aspect of we don't get paid to do this on a regular basis. We really don't do extra exercise during the week to make sure we're in physical shape, but we do go to practice. So that still makes us an athlete, and it requires some athletic ability, and there's some competitiveness involved here. You need to plan your practice. You go to practice, you have an idea. Everybody wants to go to practice and have some fights. It's like, so what I do is I try to do multiple passes with people, and I try to make, the learning passes to work on my training. And then I do the, hey, let's just freaking fight and get some fights and get that energy and blow that wad out. And then and then the friends that you fight on a regular basis that are the good guys, you're like, they're the ones you're like, all right, we're just going to go beat the hell out of each other, and this is going to be good, and I'm going to go home and my brain just dumped out, and I can go back to work and not hate people. But so those are the pieces that you gotta kind of add together and work. And so when you're at practice, you work. You can't just work on range alone, other than to understand range, but you got to work on position with it. It's and I guess that's why I call it math, because it's the easiest way or the easiest language to spell it out at. You can't do timing unless you're doing fighting. Because the Pell has the worst timing out of all the fighters around, because they just stand there and they just take it. It's like, oh yeah, it's like Rocky, but they don't come out. They don't have a comeback. And it's like, the best you got. That's the best you got. That's the best you got. Oh, okay, we're done. You get out of here, Pell. I'm gonna go find a guy, or another fighter. But so you gotta, when we get to this balance thing, because like it's very easy and susceptible to fall to, hey, I'm gonna do this one thing more, and you get over focused into it, forgetting that there's a whole equation involved here. So make sure you balance it out. You have to moderate yourself and control yourself. And because we fall victim while training to, oh wow, that really worked, I'm going to go kill that dead horse and beat it to death until there's blood all over the place, and this horse is just part of the ground, because it's like, I won something, I got something. We get excited, we can't help it, we just want that success. But you have to have the discipline to go, hey, I need to keep a balance and make this better for myself and move on. I'm going to go down to the bottom of this thing, yeah, because I already covered that. Let's see. Drills and Pells for position. Oh, drills and Pells are good position for examples. Yeah. So basically, when you're working on position and range, your Pell is a tool for that. A lot of guys, like when I started out fighting, is we were in the backyard and we were hitting at this tire, hanging around a Pell, and that's all we were really doing. There was not like, hey, this is how body mechanics work. Hey, if you're really close, you're hitting in the middle of your stick. It was just, we're hitting a stick in the damn ground. That was all. I didn't get a lot out of that, other than my left arm got stronger. That's probably about it. And I got good at kicking tires' asses. There we go. So when you're at the Pell, think about the range you are to it. Think of this type of shot you're throwing. Then change your position. It's like a footwork drill where, your partner will call out a shot, right? And, so if they're smart, they'll go, hey, it's like flat stamp, you throw a flat stamp, and then they call off leg. You got to rotate over and you got to step over to break the center line to go throw the off leg. Now you move to your right, like in my case, I moved to the right, you move to your left. Being righties, you move to your left, and then they call another shot. And what they're trying to do is get you to move around the Pell and change your position with your Pell. Right? And you can do that at B and C range a little bit, and practice throwing it. Some other drills, for, like the pressure is, that's all human, you know, pressure, timing, and tempo. One thing you can do with timing actually on the Pell, I didn't think about it, but like I would sit there with throwing offsides, and I had a cue ball size dot on the Pell, right? And I have a line at the top of the cue ball, a line at the bottom, and a line in the middle. And I took this from playing pool, because when you sit there and you want to draw on the cue ball, you stroke the cue stick to where it hits the center and pushes to the bottom, and the cue ball draws backwards, right? And if you want the cue ball to go really far, you hit the top of it. So I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. It's like I should try doing that fighting. Like, well, you don't draw a ball and you don't push a ball very far, but the one thing is you practice at pool doing that, and that's the thing. And it's these micro adjustments on this cue ball because it's so small. So you're hitting the top of the diamond, the bottom of the diamond, a cue ball. That's how pool players practice with hitting the cue ball to do the magic they wanted to do. So I went to the Pell and I'm like, all right, I'm going to work on hitting to the top of the Pell and that top of that cue ball, the bottom of that cue ball, and the middle of that cue ball. That's an inch adjustment each time. Go out and fight a guy. He has a triangle in front of his face. I just have to figure out, do I go below the cue ball, to the center of the cue ball, or to the top of the cue ball to hit him in the face with the tip of my sword? So I'm just teaching him about. Now, the timing. This is the part where you can practice timing. Well, you think about it. You're hitting the Pell and you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 4. You change that pace of how often you hit it after you practice hitting the target a little bit. Because we get used to hitting the Pell and we're going boom, 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 or doing a 2-shot combo, flat snap, offside leg, wrap to the head, offside to the face. You're going continually the whole time, right? Well, you can throw a pause in there and take a step and practice slowing down your motion, and then go out to a human person that can hit you back and move with you and read off of what you're doing and practice that timing off of that to see how the window works and how a pause changes it, how speeding up the shot, going from a lazy leg shot to a fast arm wrap. That tempo change is huge right there. So those are some of the key things there with that. Let's see. I don't know how else, I haven't given this class before until today on like putting all these pieces together or giving components of it. So hopefully I got the concept to you of putting these things in a bucket, some ideas of, work them into your training and practice, because that's what you should be doing, and looking at the effects with it, and then using it for your drills and your Pells. If you do the Pell, I only do the Pell for working out theory, and then I go find human beings because I think human beings are a better piece to work with. But if you got a Pell, you got a Pell. In quarantine, you can get more than 6 feet with a Pell. So, is there any questions in the room at this point on any parts of these, or something that needs to be more elaborated? Feel free to ask. I'm here to answer questions. Something comes to mind later, you can always get a hold of me. I'm here to, I live to answer fighting questions. I'm like I want to be the Dear Abby of fighting. See, which drills do you do on the Pell? Okay, thanks for throwing a bone out there, man. I appreciate it. But really, on the Pell, if I do anything on the Pell, honestly, drills that I've done in the past that I liked is around the clock. I think the around the clock drill is probably one of the best Pell drills there is, because it teaches you to throw shots at different angles from different positions of your hand and your body. And it forces you to move your body so you start using proper body mechanics. Because your body mechanics are the critical thing. You can hit the Pell 100 times. The guy's doing the 500, the 100 days of Pell, it's really good and can work on condition. But for your skill set, sometimes it doesn't always help. So it's a tool. How you use the tool, it's like you don't take bolts off with a hammer, But so that's one drill there. And really, most of the time that I work with the Pell for a drill aspect is I'll do what's called a short stick drill. And that's where I get up at an A range to the Pell. And this is to work on using my core muscles to deliver force. So what I'm doing is I'm at this A range to the Pell, and I do not worry about target zones. And all I'm doing is I'm throwing a flat snap on the Pell, and I'm crunching my core as I do it. And then I rotate my hand over so I can do the offside, and then I expand my chest and release my core and clench, I guess, I don't know the muscle groups in the back, but I'm flexing my back muscle. So I'm doing the opposite what it is. So I'm just chopping to the side, I rotate over, and I expand, because the whole idea is to learn how to do the proper muscle groups to throw shots. Because, a lot of times people like, stronger, bigger guys, they have strong arms. They get away with it. And they can go for 5 miles to me going 2 miles with my weak little arms hitting shots. So I have to use a lot more of my body muscle, my core. So that's why I'll do that drill a lot more. And, just to keep that focus in those muscle groups. So when I do fight, because you still use the same muscle groups thrown out at C range. When you get into C range, B range, and A range, you definitely use those muscle groups. If you're not flexing your core, and you're just using your arm, 8 rounds of crown, best 2 out of 3, your arm's going to hate you at the end of the day. But if you use your core, you can finish that day and go, we probably could do a couple more rounds. It's just my brain is dead. Your brain dies before your arm dies. And that out of the two, I guess, I don't know. I wouldn't want either. Never mind. But okay, so as you transition from Pell to live person, is there a particular drill you use to test things out, or do you just jump directly into the live fire style practice? Well, I pick my opponent appropriately for whatever I'm testing. I don't try to just, I don't want to randomize it too much because I'm collecting data. So if I can control a little more of my data to, to manage the data, you get the point. But so I'll select the right people for that to figure that out. And what I'll do is I'll approach it and I'll remind myself in practice that, my job here out of doing these passes with this person is I want to test out this theory I have and build data on it to find some commonality. So when I get, we'll do our passes and I try not to, I try not to be selfish. And the reason I say this is like, I'm a knight, I got to practice, guys that are not knights are expecting me to give them good fights, and they're trying to get information out of me and build on themselves. So if I'm totally focused on me, that would be selfish. So I try to like give some good fights, and then if they give me some feedback of, hey, I've been working on this and that, I try to be a good test person for them. We're like, oh, okay, you're working on some range stuff. I'll try to change up a little bit and try to play it where I can be a good training partner for you, so you get information you need, and you can give, I can give you feedback. And then also, this is what I'm working on. How'd you feel about it? But I usually ask after because I'm trying to find a commonality with that and build off of that data. But I need to have it to where they're not going, I was thinking about what he was saying, and really my perception is off, and I'm going to tell you something wrong, and now you're misled. It's like I need to find out after the fact, because I can compare what they say to what they did, and I know what happened. And then the other part to this is I knew what range I was at, I knew what position I was at, I remember what pressure I was applying, I remember what the timing was, and I remember what the tempo is. That's where the discipline comes in, is knowing those pieces to it. It's like I did a class a couple times called videotaping fighting, and it wasn't about using a camera. It was about using your own eyes, the lens to your brain, and practicing, remembering, because as a fighter, when we're training, one of the key things that we can do that helps us is knowing where we're at, and the game we would play is we'd have 2 guys fight, they go out there and fight, we stop them and go, so where were you when you hit him with that offside? And you won't believe, you'd be surprised at how many people don't really know their relationship to their opponent and where they're at. And the truth is, it's because they don't practice it. They haven't trained their brain to process that information. Their eyes are deceived by something. But when you practice that observation skill, you get stronger at it. So you practice videotaping your fights. So you really literally know where you're at. So when your coach comes by, hey, yeah, you're a B range, and you're like, no, that was a lot farther away. What are you talking about? Because I mean, we're all guilty of that. I mean, I've watched videotape of me fighting and gone, oh, well, I guess I really wasn't where I thought I was. You know, it's just it just happens that way. You know, and it's true. But anyhow, you know, so I segued into videotaping. Sorry. But it is a good drill. I think, you know, if you have at your local practice something to try, if you need some more information on it, hit me up and I'll explain the whole concept a little more deeper. I think it's a really good training tool. It builds up your observation skills. And also for those people that were in the earlier class, when we were talking about more of the probabilities and so forth, learning to observe for keys for people, that's where that brain and the video observation comes in handy. And then in the long run, it makes you a better teacher. You know, I've watched plenty of guys fight and sit there and talking with other knights and stuff, and we're like, oh, why is that guy doing that? Why is that guy doing that? You know, and it really came down. The guy had too big of a demigauntlet in his basket hilt. And the other guy's like, he's not doing the Spider-Man grip. He's not doing this and that. You know, it's like observation skills help you become a better teacher. You start thinking, you start learning. All right, then see what we're at 2:46, but because the other class does not have a 30-minute break between it, so we'll stop about 2:50. So that way, if you got to go to the bathroom, or whatever. So, is there any other questions or commentary? You know, because I mean, if you have information where like, hey, this, I would add this to this. You know, it's conversation. It makes us grow. Yeah. I can do moose ears for everybody too to keep them entertained while they're thinking of questions. You know, so, hey, Rocky.
This class is actually scheduled until 3:30.
Is it 3:30? Because on the spreadsheet I looked at, don't make me screen share it.
I thought it was, you can, if you have it as 3, then we'll park you are correct.
Yeah, well,
I'll go with
actually, I
yours.
have. Well, the thing is, yeah, they have their class starting at. I guess 3:30. Oh shit.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you guys
3:30
can
to
go for a
3:30.
while if you want to have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, let me pull up ARC and I'll show you guys how I manage my range with T-Rexes in ARC. It's very interesting. You're trying to stay away from them bastards. They can kill you. Yeah. But anyhow, I mean, I don't know what else really to cover with this subject. When I came up with the idea of it, I thought it was going to be longer, to be honest with you. Because I haven't really taught it before. But if there's something, and honestly, even if you think something doesn't make sense and you think it should be different, really speak up. I mean, that's what fighting. That's the beauty of what we do as a hobby. I mean, it's one thing where it's not a school. We have like the school of like Grigor's Night, Trelawn School of Fighting. That's how I grew up in the SCA. That's Trelawn School. That's the Bedford School. We really don't have a school. We just have a guy who teaches a bunch of guys, and everybody emulates him because it worked for him. See. Okay. Yeah, your answer earlier in basic range class really covered my questions. You really need to work on your questions, Grigor. It's like if I had to counsel you as a knight to a squire, you really need to work on questions. But I hope, honestly, I know you're out at Sundragon a lot because you were the marshal out there. I hope really go out and do some practices, get the guys to try some of this stuff. If you need help when we're back in business, I'll drive up on a Sunday. That's why I get paid by the kingdom to teach fighting. I get a check every other week. I won't disclose the amount by a contractual agreement, but they pay me to do that stuff as a knight. Oh, and Merrick, don't feel guilty that you don't have a question. It's your account. I wouldn't give you counsel. You're on your own now. You can be a fluke or you can be a duke. All right, so we'll go on this. How do you manage range with someone much greater reach than you? Yeah, I know you're happy. So how to manage range with somebody range greater than you? I usually buy stilts, and then I get real fighting shoes with a larger platform so I can maintain balance. So when I crouch in the sombrero, I don't fall, because that's usually happens. Um, but other than that, one of the techniques I apply is just changing position. Position and tempo is one of the key things that I rely on. So like, we both fight Al-Anon. An Al-Anon's patient, he has good eyes, he's smart, he's fought a lot, he has a lot of stuff in his database. So trying to trick him with, like doing a little bob down a lot, doing an elevation change and then swooping in under doesn't work for him. That's usually a rib shot or an arm shot from Al-Anon. So, I have to sit there and get some rotation going. Hey, we're recording this. That's a Richard. But but anyhow, changing that position and trying to change tempo up on them a little bit is one of the strategies I'll try to use a lot. Because it's like when I fight Duke Aaron, but Duke Aaron likes to fight in close. He doesn't run away as often. But still, I have to change tempo with him a little bit because he's very successful. He's a big guy, and he knows his strength is in his size, and he's deliberate on how he applies it. He's not just some giant monster. He doesn't sit and just use that to pound a can open. He waits. He has timing. He's thinking, So you have to sit there and lull him out by changing his position, get him to rotate. One of the rotation is probably one of the biggest things that people don't use and think of. Yeah, change the flow. There you go. So a lot of people don't use that position change. So because it's funny. One thing that came back to my mind one point was I remember being a new guy, right? And I had plastic armor, a moving blanket gambeson. I had a wood shield with green hose around it, and I decided I was going to go to Wednesday practice in the Bernier Veld and learn how to fight instead of getting beat up every year at war, right? I'm going to get better. And and my only thing I had going for me was I was left-handed, and when you get to better fighters, they don't play around with you when you're left-handed. So you learn that your hip and shoulder become a really good target, and they hurt. But so you get trained really quick that you need to rotate a lot. And when I started rotating is when I started feeling safer to close. And so that thought came to mind to me at one point where like, what am I not doing anymore? I'm like, well, everybody just lets me come in straight in and we just battle it out that way. And I'll do a lateral step left or right when I'm at B range. And it was like, oh, outside range. When you were a new guy, that strategy actually did work. Let's take it to the lab. Let's test it out a little bit and start applying it and changing that and pushing them to rotate. Because people want to, more often enough, people want to be static when they fight. They got their feet planted because what do they do to train? They hit pels. And usually when they're hitting the pel, they're addressing a piece of wood that doesn't move. They stand there statically and they throw shots at it. If the pel decided just like in the middle of your mantra, kata to go, I'm going right. And you're like, what the F happened to me? Get back here. That pel moved. You get freaked out, right? Because the tempo and pace changed. So those are some of the things I try to do. So we have another question. You have incredible footwork. How do you train it? What is your methodology? Actually, that's a really good question. What I've done in the past is I bought an extra set of feet. I sent some to Japan because there's this guy there that's was a former clock mechanic. And what he would do is he would do adjusting and stuff and change out the quartz. And then I get my new feet back in right before crown and totally, they're like timed and succinct. I mean, but back to your question. I'm just killing time, guys. And, if you're not engaged, it doesn't help, right? But how do I train my footwork? I'll be honest with you. Like I said, when I started, it was you got your back foot, your shield foot to the front, your sword foot to the back, you're leaning backwards. It's almost like you're receiving a charge in a shield wall. That's how they taught us. That was footwork back in the day. And you just stand there and throw shots at a guy and you may move forward or backwards. That's it, right? And then as time went by, it was like, hey, these center grip things are way more fun, but you freaking have to move so you don't get like your ass broke or your butt hit. There we go. Or crack a rib, because it's hot. We don't wear armor. And what I started thinking about is I started watching people fight. And the one thing that came to mind literally was skateboards. you're on a skateboard and you're skateboarding. What's the biggest fear you have? I'll tell you, it's the small little rock that hits your wheel, stops your skateboard, flings you off your skateboard, and you really get injured for reals. You break a wrist. You get road rash. You really get hurt from that stupid rock. How do you prevent that from happening other than sweeping all the sidewalk that you ride on? Well, you keep your feet close together so you keep a damn balance on your skateboard. So when some abnormal behavior happens, you react to it. And so basically it was, all right, I need to keep my feet shoulder width apart at all times. And then I realized, if you go into well, it's a terrible analogy. All right. Well, it's the closest one I got. You go into a bar and, I'm not the guy that starts a fight. I never do. I'm like, I hate confrontation, you know, but I always have, for some reason, I have that friend that somehow is a fight magnet guy. And I don't know why, but I just like those kind of people apparently. You go in there, and when stuff just gets weird, and someone says something out loud, and that guy has to respond, because I don't know if they bait easy, they get trolled, I don't know, but tension starts to rise a little bit, and my non-confrontational brain's like, oh great, this is going to turn into a fight. Nobody plays by Anchorman rules. I don't want to get hit in the face. That's all I got going for me right now. So my mind starts working, and you start thinking about it, and that pressure in that room comes up, and you're like, you don't get in some squat down fighting foot stance just to be prepared for a bar fight to happen. You get your feet under you so some guy doesn't knock you on your ass. What's the difference between fighting? Boxers don't do it. The only reason it works in martial arts is they're all fighting the same style. So your feet in position makes sense. You're doing Kempo karate, you're doing Kempo karate. Jiu-jitsu, you're doing jiu-jitsu. Because the moves are all defined by a style there, really. So, like Kempo karate, do your feet ever get really super wide? They get a little wider in your shoulder because you're doing punches and kicks. You know, uh, you know, um, Taekwondo is different. Yeah, but so in Hartsu, it came into my mind. It's like, hey, you got to have your feet together because you're doing what? We're always reacting when we fight. I like to be in neutral. I put my sword in a neutral place. It's an equal distance to all my different shots. My feet are in a neutral distance, so I can react to whatever position I got to change. So to practice footwork, I go to practice on a regular basis, and I just keep walking like I'm normal. And then if I have to sit there and think of any analogy that really was for walking, I'm at the mall, and it's Christmas time, and there's big sales going on, and it's crowded, and I got to get to Sears so I can get to the Craftsman sale before somebody else does. I'm walking through the mall. That's how I practice training my feet, walking fast through crowds at malls to get wrenches cheap. All right, so that obviously will stick in your mind. Remember Craven and wrenches at the mall. That's how you practice footwork. See? That's how this stuff works. All right, so when you hear Leon, you say move as a lefty. What thought? Let's see. Yeah. Oh boy, I was saying lefty. Oh yeah. What thought do you consider as far as your position to where your opponent's sword is? Oh, so the relationship of the opponent's sword. Because you think about it, a sword can add to body language and help create a little bit of tempo to the fight because that tension that sword can have. So I always sit there and I look at my opponent and I draw that circle around his body, so I know every part of him. That's my pre-flight checklist. I hear lay on. I pay attention to his hilt because wherever that hilt goes, that stick is attached to it is a thing that can hit me. So I just basically keep an eye on that guy because wherever he is, if he's over across my body to this side of my body, that's where those shots could hit me. So that's where my blocking zone needs to be. His hand moves over to this side of my body. I know I have to block on that side of the body because there's only so far he can reach. There's probabilities of that, right? So I say, see, Eugene. Oh yeah, I remember you insist I keep my feet closer because all the lunging I was doing was draining my energy. That really helped me the ability to last longer in a tournament. Good. I'm glad that's working. I heard Viagra helps lasting longer distance too. But it's got to keep it funny. All right, let's see. I'm going on there. Let's see. When you're learning this word, yeah. Let's see. When you are, yeah, Merrick, get some Crocs. You can fight in Crocs. Put some spurs on those. We could paint them on there, buddy. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, it's my preferred range legged. A range, may I go? Your Highness. Because if we're at A range, then I can hit you while I'm on my knees. Yeah. The farther you away, the closer I have to walk, and you're at risk walking on your knees. You know. Now, are you talking like if? Let's see. We're gonna. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So my preferred range being legged is A range. My preferred range fighting someone legged is C, and transitioning to A. You know, that is the most vulnerable. Closing. You know, it's 3 p.m. All right, guys. See, we got a half hour till the next one. All right. Any other good questions? You know.
It's actually Duke Brandis's, the one you've been recommending, starts
Okay.
at 3:30.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So we got about 15 more minutes. That way, everybody has time to get something to drink, go to the bathroom. You know, I mean, but you know, I know I kid around a lot, and the reason I kid about footwork a lot is like people are like, can you teach a class on footwork? And I'm like, I can do it in 5 minutes. Keep your feet shoulder width apart. Any questions? Usually it takes about 4 minutes to digest it. That's it. You know, but really, you know, we overcomplicate footwork. You know, it's like, you know, whatever leg sword, you know, we have sword leg forward or back. You know, yeah, well, you know, crossing your feet, common sense. You know, but I cross my feet often. But when they're shoulder width apart, I can do it. You know, because I had people in rapier tell me not to cross my feet, and I realized, no, that works really good being left-handed because it's the only way I can traverse the field the way I need to in a fight. The thing is don't get myself off balance and tangled up, you know, and go extreme. But, you know, really, we overcomplicate footwork. You know, your feet move you back and forth, and I see a lot of younger fighters making more effort trying to get their feet to do stuff instead of just walking normal. You know, and you because we get this thing of we're lowering our center of gravity and stuff like that. We overcomplicate it. You know, do you walk really fast? You don't have to. You know, and then do you have to sashay? You know, because a lot of people do the old Errol Flynn sword fighting sashay, and they're like sword foot forward, and they never change. You know, and and it's like, why are you doing that? You're at C range. You know, you can scoot in or you can walk in. I think walking in is the best choice. You know, just close in on your target. Just figure out the timing is the key part to that. You know, being a lefty, I learned that timing and stepping are a critical thing unless you want to get good at fighting on your knees. So I learned to time when I took a step. And so early on it was they throw a shot, I take a step. Because I know where their sword is, the thing that could hit my leg. You know, so that's how I would learn to step forward so I could close distance. And then I learned to step to the shoulder because it's like, oh yeah, those are all the targets. I get over there, it's more painful for him than it is for me, and I hate pain. You know, but other than that, it's like the lateral movement. You know, we overthink on, you know, I'm going to step to my right or my left. And when we think about taking that step, we think doing the gung gum dance, you know, where you get really wide, where you need to step an inch. Break the center line by an inch, and now that inch makes a huge difference for your hand to reach over for your other target. You know, watch other people do it. The cartoon ones, yeah. But any other questions on that part? All right, I think we're almost done. I like how Yannick takes notes. She's probably like writing things like, oh, you know, I really got to do that laundry for that thing Tuesday. I better write that down. Yeah, okay, that's done. Oh, yep, mow the yard.
No, I'm taking notes. I take notes in all classes I take. It's how I ideas in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, everybody learns different, and that's the other thing with training. You need to figure out what way works best for you learning. You know, this is just no different than any other task. Um, yeah, Grigor, yeah, it's the hardest part is when I get in close is to remember to keep moving. Yeah, you know, but the thing is, the one thing you can do is catch yourself, and when you catch yourself, pause a little longer, then throw a shot. See what happens. You're in the lab, you know. But when you catch yourself doing something wrong, one tip I always do to remind myself is if I make this repetitive mistake or I'm trying to train myself away from something, I force myself to disengage. Even though things are gone dandy for me, they're awesome. I'm like, oh yeah, I could have hit that guy on the back of the head and had free will to do it. Oh, you were trying to do that thing. Here's your punishment. You got to disengage. Got to go back to go redoing it. And nothing like irritating yourself to learn something better. And it honestly, it's like, yeah, you catch, it's like you can beat yourself up. I'm like, oh, I know I did that. Oh, I know I did that. I'm a very realistic person, and I beat myself up about it. And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have stepped that way. Well, if I don't punish myself, I don't fix it. And that's the one way you can punish yourself is screw it up where you're like, oh, boom, I caught myself. Because what you find out is your observation of yourself doing it and your reaction to it gets faster and faster, and you disengage even sooner. And that punishment really works, and that timing changes. You're like, all right, how did you stop doing that? I basically tell myself that I can't fight unless I do it right. So hopefully that'll work. That's the strategy that worked for me. See that? Have your knight, have a ruler, and play none. Let's see Let's see. Okay, when I train on something on the Pell, that works great. I find it difficult to translate sometimes with a live target because they obviously move. Do you have a particular way to deal with this disconnection between Pell work and live practice, or is that just the way it is? It is not the Mandalorian. It is the way. Or actually, the Mandalorians didn't do that. Oh, yeah, they did, right? But anyhow, so really on that, that's a very good point on Pell practice. Because that was always my problem early on with the Pell too. Is like, it made no sense hitting a piece of wood that didn't move, and until I realized what I'm supposed to be using it as a tool for, right? Work on mechanics, targeting. The other part though is, because the Pell moves, right? So we would do we called it the square dance drill, and that's where somebody calls the shot to throw, and you keep, they keep calling it, and you keep moving around to help you move. And what I really realized as time went on, and especially with training other people, was when I approach the Pell, I need to compensate what I'm doing on the Pell for a live person. So I line up against the Pell and I start thinking, okay, I'm going to throw this shot or whatever. I'm going to work on this deep offside, let's say, right? So I know that they'll have a shield in the way and so forth. My Pell doesn't have a shield. It doesn't throw a shot at me, whatever. Well, I change my angle and body in relationship to the Pell to realize where I need to be to finish the shot rather than start the shot. Because really, the only thing that the Pell can emulate is me making contact with it, right? So if I'm in the position to finish the shot that I'm practicing throwing on the Pell, that's helping me learn how to finish the shot with proper body mechanics and where my feet need to be and where my hand needs to move. And I can tell from that position and by looking at that Pell and pretending it's a human being that I'm at the target and where I'm at in physical relationship to the target. Instead of being standing in front of the thing going, I'm going to work on an offside to the back of the head, and I'm saying straight on with that Pell, and I'm like, bang, bang. It's like, okay, my sword can reach that far, but he's a human being. I know I need to move over to this side of his body to lean over and throw that shot. So I'll practice throwing the shot this way instead of being here. Does that make sense? Because yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so it's just, remember, a Pell's a tool. How you use the learning tool to accomplish what you want to do. It's not a human being. It's a stick. It doesn't move. Adjust your thought process. And I think thought process, once you start thinking the right way, it'll help you out a lot, and train the way you fight. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I can't do that. It's like, if I had trained the way I fight, God, how does Merrick do that? He's like fights so angry. He'd have to be angry all the time, you know. But try to make it the real life. It's just like target range. I always think of being in the military. You're at the range, you're shooting at 50-meter targets, 10-meter targets, and so forth. And then they have the little thing, and then it just like goes, and it falls down when you shoot it. Right? That's real people, all right. That's but when you have to go run through a trench and you're shooting at targets, that makes it real, because it's like, he can't move, but I can. I'm compensating for it. But anyhow. Any other questions? Well, you're all wonderful people, and I really appreciate you spending this time with me. I'm going to cherish this forever. But really, no, thanks for attending. And really, like I said, most of you guys know me. The door is open. I just don't want to sit there and bug you. Feel free to bug me. I don't take offense. You're not wasting my time, whatever. I love doing this. This is my passion, obviously, as most of you, since you know me, it's my passion. Fighting is my church, man. That's the one thing I decided, I'm going to do this the best for me in my life, put all my energy into it. Now, parenting, on the other hand, is the second, I think, right now. I don't know. I'm still battling that. Teddy's kind of making me make decisions, but just joking. But anyhow, but seriously, hit me up. I don't think everything I think is the only way. There's more ways to do things. There's different thought processes. Don't let anybody tell you this is how you have to do something. You're unique, you're different. You need to figure out what works for you and what's best for you, and try things, and I will give you my advice and thoughts on how I think it works better. And then you make your decision for you, because that's the most important thing with fighting. It's so confusing when having 20 million teachers tell you 20 million different things, and everybody tell you this is how you have to do things, and they're wrong. I was taught that, and I found out that was wrong, and I broke that mold. And I want to tell you, I think I've been successful in fighting. So, all right, let's kill this for the next class.
Well, I'll be stopping the recording, and then we will be free to move about the Collegium.